Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to another entry and I guess this real pitch series that I have. And today I'm joined by a really special guest, World Queen Kanji. Yes, I said queen. Would you say hi, please?
Hi.
I don't know. I think she's only been in one video. And also, guys, you've seen him in other videos. You've seen him. He goes on my channel a lot. World King Kanji.
Hi! I have the ability to switch genitalia and my pitch of my voice will change as well.
No, but I got called a special guest.
Yeah, I'm not a special guest.
No, I'm the special one.
Guys, this is a really interesting video because I brought on basically Kanji and World Queen Kanji to kind of talk to you about something that I actually have a whole lot of passion for. Now, I've covered this stuff on my channel a little bit. The Saw franchise, the horror franchise that ran from 2004 to 2010 with 7 movies in between. And if you know me, if you know my channel to some degree or another, you know that I really have a huge passion for these movies. And I brought these two on because they also enjoy these movies, especially World Queen Kanji. I heard that she was a huge fan, so I just requested a special request to bring her on for this actual video. So really, thank you so much for joining me today, both of y'all. Thank you so much.
That's okay, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
You know me, I'm always happy to be on your channel, Mark.
Exactly. Yes. And so, guys, today we're going to be talking about the Saw franchise, like I said, and the point is not so much what a Saw Legacy would be like or Saw 8 or anything. That's not what I want to pitch today. I want to pitch this really interconnected, this woven story from 7 films that we got from 2004 to 2010, like I already said. What if we took this and kind of hindsight rebooted it into a television series? Something like more of a serialized storytelling situation where we're seeing it once every year or month or something. Personally, in my opinion, I would really like to see it as an anime series. Like I told y'all, it would be so interesting to watch maybe just like 24, maybe 30 episodes of this one story, get a very coherent, brutal series, and then just kind of end it. And it all just makes complete sense instead of stretching it out for 7 years. What do y'all think?
Totally and utterly agree with you. I think it would really work awesome as a series. I completely agree with you as well on the length. I think so many series these days, they just drag it on for too long. They run out of ideas, that the characters kind of lose almost like their fiber. And it gets boring, you know, so many series just get so boring. And so I think, yeah.
I'm in the same boat, is just keep it short. The one thing that we have when we're talking about most television series these days, especially Americanized television, is, like you said, they lose their fiber. Basically, these characters become kind of jokes of themselves. And it's not like the Saw franchise, to me, has a story to tell, but it doesn't have something that can last for 10 years. It's not like some of these series that we see from time to time. It's not a Supernatural where it can just like pick and choose from several centuries of different supernatural cases or kind of interpretations of religion and all this stuff and basically go for 12 years. It really doesn't have that type of a lifespan to it.
Yeah, I mean, if I can chime in as well, I mean, I do think that one thing was really interesting you did, because I mean, like, I'm sure we're probably going to get into it a little bit more later, but we were talking about all these horror series that have turned up in serial fashion that work really well. But one thing that doesn't really seem to crop up so much is you were interested in having this become an anime series. Now, from somebody, I mean, I'm only myself really interested in a couple of them, but it's something that I think would work in a really interesting kind of fashion. Also, you have got the problem, if you do turn it into a television series, you're going to get a lot of the people that really love the original 7 films. People are going to be sort of like, well, these aren't the actors I remember playing the characters. And it's not like a superhero film where it's adapted from a comic book character, so you got these different people's portrayals of these characters. Half the time you see them in the films and you almost feel like that character was written for that actor. So it is very hard to try and get somebody to replace it unless they're fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And you know, those people are getting up there, especially Tobin Bell, who he himself is in his late 70s at this point, and you know, it's hard to believe that he's going to come back and reinterpret the role again or play that role again at any time soon. Even in the 8th film, we just absolutely don't know. So yeah, kind of getting away from that and kind of seeing a visual portrayal of them as cartoon characters or something is something that would be a little bit less jarring to super fans like myself. And And obviously, it's possible. I mean, I've talked about this on my channel a lot recently with seeing series like Death Note or something just be a really dark tonal series that go and tell one particular story in the matter of 30 or so episodes and then completely end it, and with no real need to go back to it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, because like you're really interested in like American Horror Story and stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I love about it. Obviously, I think it's so talented the way that it's the same character, well, the same actors in every single season, just playing a different character. And not only do I think that's so, I've never seen that done before, which I think was really great.
Yeah,
which I think
unique.
was really nice, and which was unique, which was new. But what I loved about it is that it just, when it was over, it was over. There was no kind of dragging back over it, sort of back and forth. It was done when it was done.
So you basically think it'd work better when things are kind of kept short.
Yeah, short and sweet.
A story to each kind of season, to each arc kind of thing.
Exactly. And I think the shorter and the sweeter that you leave it, and the more kind of intense it is, the more people are going to want to come back.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, like, it is one of those things I think myself when I watch certain series and I'm kind of like, okay, well, it's kind of like, in typical sitcom fashion, when you watch two characters that, are going to end up together at the end, but they don't start off together. So, for instance, like a Ross and Rachel kind of thing in Friends, where everybody was like, oh, they're going to end up together at the end, sort of thing. And they're dancing around it for how many seasons? And you're just like, just fucking do it, sort of thing. Like, pull the trigger, So it's like one of those things where I think if you drag something on for that long, you really start to get almost, you almost tend to get a bit pissed off with the series. So I think having it short and sweet, make sure there is a story that they want to tell, execute it in a few episodes if they can do, and then with anything else, maybe move on to something else, like for the next season.
This is kind of one of the problems I think they have with the films. I mean, I know a lot of people really disliked Seven, and I think that's kind of majorly because it was just kind of dragged and it felt like they were out of ideas, honestly.
Yeah.
It really did. And so
the story had been told by that
exactly.
point. Yeah.
And you think, don't make the same mistake, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, in some degree, when we have issues where we come in, and especially with Seven, it's not that Seven's twist or turn was a big deal with the series. I mean, it was this, but it seemed like they had stretched it so much that they had no choice but to do the huge fan speculation. And spoilers, by the way, but this is a 6-year-old film. Really, come on, guys. Like, it's like the fan speculation where basically they had, Dr. Gordon's been around all this time and he's been the one doing all these surgeries and everything. I mean, that, to me, it seemed logical. It seemed okay. I was fine with it as a fan. But really, when they start doing this, when any series starts taking these fan interpretation or fan wish lists and kind of making it canonized, it seems desperate and it seems lazy, because as fans, we have all these speculations and all this stuff, but we're not really supposed to be right. The people who create and craft this stuff are supposed to be a little better than we are at interpreting their own characters and story. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you almost shouldn't be left to have to speculate about things. Some people should tie up the loose ends. Mm-hmm. But there was a really interesting idea for one of the seasons, possibly, if this show was adapted into a TV series. You two were talking earlier about the concept of, where did Billy come from and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you were really interested in sort of finding out about that yourself, weren't you?
Yeah, I just felt that was something that kind of wasn't tied up. I thought that it was kind of a really cool kind of thing, how obviously he never showed his face and whatever. This little creepy Billy
tricycle
sort of
rampant.
rolls in on a tricycle, sometimes isn't on a tricycle. And
ring, bitch!
Yeah. And I thought that's cool and all, but where did that come from?
Mm-hmm. And the thing is the movies got a little bit less of an interpretation of it, or they kind of got away from the original interpretation. If you've looked into this series as much as I have, the thing you find is that there's been multiple different interpretations of exactly who John Kramer was before he became the infamous Jigsaw Killer. And the original interpretation around the time they were making the second film, which was an adaptation of Darren Lynn Bousman's, the director, a film script that he had submitted and that Lionsgate bought, or Twisted Pictures bought, entitled The Desperate. And they took that script and they reinterpreted it to be Saw 2, with Lee Winnell actually taking Darren Lynn Bousman's script and rewriting it to make sense within the canonized version of the original series or the original film. The thing is if you take that and they interpreted John Kramer as actually being a toy maker instead of a civil engineer as he was in the original film. So that's where Billy came from. Billy was kind of an interpretation, a toy he made as an interpretation of basically everything that he stood for, or basically a childish innocence and everything. And I think that comes across in the films, but very briefly and just never really explained at all.
I love the idea of him having been a toy maker. And like you said, kind of with the loss of innocence thing, it's like, being a toy maker, you're making kind of lovely things for kids and whatever, and it's almost like as his life has got worse and it's just gone steadily down the pan, it's got creepier and more morbid.
Fucked up.
Yeah, essentially. But I just love that. It's just like a physical representation of kind of almost kind of what he's become, and I just love that. I really do.
I mean, if I could throw something in about Billy quickly before we change it all as well, one thing that I actually felt was really damaged by the end of, the last few films and stuff was the fact that they didn't have, that we didn't see Billy, you know what I mean, kind of thing. Like, and if we did, it was like, briefly, because it's very strange that you get these horror films with franchise, like, built around characters and stuff. Like, you have the Alien films, the Predator films, Freddy Krueger, Jason. You get all these things, and they built these franchises around this character, even like Chucky and stuff. And they had this sort of flagship character for like the first 2 and a bit films, and then they just kind of wrote off the character, and you didn't see it on the promotional material anymore. It wasn't on posters and stuff, and I think that kind of took away some of the meat of the attraction of going to see the films.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, though, in some ways, I'm kind of glad about that. There's a number of people I've tried to speak to about the Saw films, and they have actually thought that Billy is Jigsaw, and I wanted to throttle them.
That's true. That's absolutely true. A lot
I'm
of people.
Like, no.
A lot of people think that the Billy doll is either named Jigsaw or is the actual killer or something, and it's really hard to like. Obviously, these are really popular films, but it's really weird to see so much misinformation in this community. We talk about misinformation in the Dragon Ball community. Obviously, it's rampant in almost any community to some degree, and it's weird to sit there and think of puppets putting all these people in traps.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, come on. He's made of wood. He's gonna die.
It's kind of like the Chucky things, though, isn't it? Like, Chucky's freaky because, like, even when he's been burnt to a cinder and stuff, his corpse still moves. But, in realism, if it was a doll coming to life in your house, you just kind of pick it up and run away and just hold it by the scruff of its neck and just throw it onto a motorway or something.
The thing is, I thought it was so much creepier because I think it was in the first 2 films where Billy was literally made out of paper mache, paint, and ping pong balls. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of awesome. Yeah. Whereas a load of kind of special effects and stuff came in the later films. But I kind of thought that was awesome.
As a side note, one thing I remember is in the 6th film, they used a Billy puppet hanging where its mouth was moving to a script, and that's the 6th film. But one of the weird trivia things they said about that was that puppet head, that mechanical head, cost $15,000. and the reason that's funny is because that was the entire budget of Paranormal Activity, which came out that same year, and essentially the success of that film killed the Saw franchise. I mean, they were going to do 2 more films, and they had to boil it down to the 7th film, which we've already talked about being very bad and kind of even despised, even by fans like me. I like the film. I'll be willing to watch it, but it's hard. I have to really push
Yeah.
myself to watch that one.
Yeah.
Well, you had your own opinions about what they were doing with like the cheap sex appeal and stuff, weren't you? About
Yeah, you know, like I love the fact that they didn't rely on that, which I think so many films do. I mean, like you got sort of women running around in bikinis, screaming, covered in blood and stuff, and you know, it's the sex appeal.
I mean, until you said screaming and covered in blood, I was quite intrigued. But yeah,
But I love the fact they didn't do that, you know, until the seventh, you know, when you've got that girl strung up on the ceiling in a bloody glass box, you know, with almost everything hanging out,
dance, bitch.
you know, that kind of thing. And then you've got Jill at the end in like a freaking nightie. And you think, woman,
Put some clothes on.
go and get changed. Good lord.
I'd like to note that I probably am going to get hit after all this from all the sexy jokes I'm trying to make.
Oh yeah.
It's and you know that's one of the things, and like we were talking about, and one of the reasons I think it would really translate into television is the Saw franchise, in terms of the actual story that they're trying to tell, is actually worth telling, like being reinterpreted and rebooted into something that's a really cohesive storyline, not just taking something like I haven't even watched it, so I can't really comment or anything, but taking something like Scream and making that into a television series.
Yeah.
All the power to you if you want to do that, or if you like that show. I'm sure it's good in its own right, but Scream is just such an it's such a non-starter for me in terms of actually trying to be so clever that it's actually really damaging to the concept of horror, in my opinion. And maybe that's why it was popular, because it made everyone feel smart. That's my opinion. That's my opinion about Scream in terms of actually being horror, and why I think that the Saw franchise really revitalized this whole, everyone calls it torture porn, because it kind of spawned things like Hostel and Wolf Creek and all these other and all these other movies.
Yeah.
But Saw did something different. Saw tried to tell a story. Was it a little bit haphazard and really interconnected to the point where it was just head-scratchingly confusing? Yes.
Yeah.
But did it try to do something different? Did it try to make you, like, the point where you're watching a horror movie franchise one a year and you're going, wait, what was going on? It really doesn't try to make you feel smart. It just like, look, you either, after a certain point, and I think the third film is when they kind of even came out and said this publicly, is if you don't know what's going on, that's on you. These are huge movies. They come out every year.
Yeah.
You don't get it. You don't get it.
Yeah, you need to go. They've been out for a while. You can pick them up from like my shop that I work in for like 50p. It's really not that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you watch them, you go, okay, yeah, I get it. But, you know, you have this interpretation, Saw's torture porn and everything. And, you know, I really resent that. I feel like it did do its part in saving the horror franchise for a couple years and revitalizing it before, like I already said, Paranormal Activity came out and the whole found footage thing became the new norm, which I think is another level of lazy, but that's not this video. So when you think about that and like the story they're trying to tell and this whole Billy stuff, the building the characters, the one thing I kind of want to get into is, what is it? Because obviously being a horror franchise, as we talked about, this series, like all the other ones, has no shortage of characters to draw from. I mean, like the well of the characters. One of the reasons the movies got old is because as they kept killing people, they had to reintroduce people or new levels of people or something, like trying to solve this case or trying to be involved with this case to the point where, you know, it becomes convoluted and just, you know, it doesn't make sense after a level. But with a short, concise story, you have to think of, okay, who are the people that you need in this story in order for it to make sense in such a short time? Because obviously you can't have everyone. So boiling it down to the most bare essentials, who do you need? Who would you need to introduce?
Well, obviously you've got like, you know, Jigsaw himself, because, you know, what's the franchise without him?
No.
If we are doing the oh, shut up! If we're doing the retelling, but we also need like, you know, Amanda and stuff, because I actually really enjoyed her character. Like,
I love Amanda's character.
yeah, I really actually kind of, you know, it's a bit fucked up when you say it, but you kind of relate in certain senses to her. It's
Yeah.
that kind of that sort of bit, but
But I love the fact that you do have to think about her character, because also, like, obviously she's a bit fucked up. Let's not lie, But there was this whole thing where she was like, he's helped me. I'm like a changed person. And then when she started setting the traps, and she basically changed them, and so you couldn't win them,
Yeah.
and the first, like, one of those, which, is gruesome, but it was awesome, was with the detector Kerry, when she was in the trap and she ended up having a rib cage pulled apart, even though she did put her hand in the acid and get the key to undo it, she still died, and so Amanda was fixing them. And so it kind of makes you think, was that just kind of an ignorance thing, or did she really not agree, that it was changing people's lives? But
that's something they could obviously go more into in a series as well. When you're breaking something down, when, let's say, the episodes are going to be like 45 minutes each sort of time, then you can really go back, because obviously when you think their films are only like, roughly just over or under 2 hours each, you can do so much character development in this stuff, which is why it's important to kind of think about the characters they're bringing in. But you know how we feel like it's convoluted with the characters that they introduce in all these series and stuff. If you were to put it into a TV series with these 45-minute length episodes or something, or if obviously you were saying it was going to be like an anime thing where it's going to be like 25 minutes, even that, depending on how many you put into a series, if you were saying like a 12-episode thing, you've still got more time to work with than you would do if you were doing a film. So you could probably still develop on all these characters that have already been introduced in the films.
Mm-hmm. And maybe even then you could focus a little bit. If you're telling this type of story, you can, while still focusing on the traps, because they're obviously a selling point, you can start focusing away from them a little bit more and start building characters. Like you already told me about, like, Amanda is a very interesting character in my opinion, and especially her relationship with John. I think, and I might not be alone in this when thinking that the original 3 films are the strongest of all.
Because, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the relationship built between these people throughout the first 3 films. And I feel like it really all comes to a head at the very end of the third one, where we see exactly like what each of them means to another, but how abusive this relationship is, and why exactly Amanda has kind of taken these strides that she has. She, like you said, she's really relatable. She's a very weak person, but also she's given this opportunity from this man who's very much in this resolve. I mean, he's dying, but this kind of notion that the third film leaves you with, and obviously the last 4 too, but to a lesser degree, is nobody can be Jigsaw besides John Kramer.
Yeah.
She can try to take up when she can learn how to do what he does, but she can't be him. He has taken her, he has quote unquote saved her, helped her, but what he's done is he's empowered her to be this person who's been timid and completely, bashed on and mistreated her entire life, being framed for something she didn't do, becoming a drug addict, becoming a cutter, becoming, in the other interpretations of this that they didn't necessarily show, having her father beat her as a child, which causes this whole cutting thing. This woman has been completely mishandled her whole life, and then this man comes and gives her absolute power.
Yeah.
To be, not just to absolute power, but to be the judger. She becomes judge, jury, and executioner to a degree.
Yeah.
And she can't handle that. So when it all comes boiling up, the first 3 films is, this relationship isn't just a father-daughter, student-teacher one. It's also this man who has this resolve is fighting a serial killer who he's trying to help throughout. And I think that is the blood and the main point of a series, is it's this father-daughter, student-teacher relationship that it boils into taking a timid girl, creating a serial killer, and then trying to figure out how to solve it before you die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when you put it in such a, in layman's terms like that, when you break it down, you can just imagine why the creators would be sat there thinking, fuck, we've got a really good story on our hands, you know what I mean? Like, you know, because it basically, it's like a film with little traps, but when you sort of look at it with perspective, the film is one big trap, turning this girl into a serial killer and then trying to fix it, you know, before it's too late sort of thing. And that is really interesting in itself. But it's kind of like, you know, if they did turn it into a TV series, it's got the ability, like you were saying, in comparison to, like, you know, taking something like Scream and then trying to turn that into a series. Obviously, I mean, like, I've seen that it's doing very well as it is. So if something like that can be taken as being fantastic, imagine what something like this could be taken as fantastic. Like what you're sort of saying with trying to make itself think smart. It's kind of like the girl pulling down your pants and sort of going, oh my god, it's so big, and when it's actually like a tiny little thing. And then, like, you know, but in this case you should be pulling down your pants and going, Jesus fucking Christ, that is big. You know, it's not a joke anymore.
Trust you.
Exactly.
What are you trying to say?
God. King, ladies and gentlemen. Jeez.
You have to answer for yourself after this call. I agree with that. I feel like that's, to me, if in terms of taking this story and boiling it down to its bare necessities.
She's just looking at me with these cold, dead eyes at the moment. If I don't make it back after this video, you know why.
Yeah, he was so
channel
dead.
Inactivity.
So dead, man.
That's the thing. Like, so that's the thing that I feel like this series really needs, is to be kind of interpreted that way. And also, and you can't deny the fact that that's not the only part of this that's out there. Obviously, if we can take a moment to kind of focus away from John and Amanda, we have people like, and I don't necessarily think Hoffman needs to be introduced to this series, although I guess he could be an interpretation of extending it even further.
Yeah, maybe a second series or something.
Maybe a second series or something. But, you know, you have, to a lesser degree, you have three other characters that I think are essential to telling the story. Not only the visual way that they told it throughout the movies, but also just the procedural kind of point of some kind of crime thriller like this, with like horror elements or just like these psychological elements to them, is obviously you need the cops. And in the second film, they kind of express that Carrie and Detective Matthews, Allison Carey and Detective Matthews, were former partners who had a love affair, which caused Detective Matthews to become divorced from his wife, and all this stuff, plus Detective Matthews' long history of basically framing these people for individual things. I mean, there's just so much drama there that can be, like, there's just so much drama and relationship in those two characters that can be taken and helped fully expressed as this story is being told. I mean, the drama between these two people who are forced to work together on this particular case as all this other stuff is folding. So you have, like I already said, the father-daughter relationship, then you have the lovers' quarrel, and then at the same time, you can take Adam's character, who is a private investigator or something, this photographer who goes around and takes pictures of people, and kind of maybe reinterpret it to the point where, what if he's just kind of this guy who kind of gets involved on his own volition and tries to figure out himself and becomes obsessed with it, just like everyone else we've seen. I mean, kind of taking on the tap role from the first film and just kind of overly enthusiastic about things, and maybe even, if you want to kind of extend it even further, maybe even becoming obsessed with Dr. Gordon as a potential witness or some kind of person who's helping, or even Jigsaw himself, and just all this stuff entangling. I mean, the one way you tell television is you have story A, B, and C each episode. You know, you have different threads that are interconnecting each episode or each couple of episode arcs, and those are your three story arcs, I think, is John and Amanda, Allison, Carrie, and Detective Matthews, and then Adam.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Totally agree. I think the thing with Adam could be something really interesting if you built that up. That'd be really cool.
I think that is one thing as well. It's just sort of, you know, the writing fuel and stuff is just knowing that, because obviously it's kind of like, I don't know if you know what I mean, but after the first 3 films, I kind of felt like occasionally it felt like they were building up to something really cool, but then they kind of, doused the flames before they could even really explore even any more of these really cool theories and, what they could go further with. Some of the stuff with Hoffman was really just cut short, and I just kind of felt like even though they dragged the boring bits of his character out, some of the more interesting bits, they kind of really, they just kind of fizzled because they just quickly went, oh, hang on, gotta solve this. And it was almost felt like they were trying to solve the wrong things in the wrong films.
Yeah. But at some point, we definitely need to see Hoffman's face now, like he got out of the reverse bear trap. We need to see his face now. I bet it's a stake.
Yeah, I mean, they're building, like Kanji said, they're building up to something, and then they just drop the ball, or they decide that that's not exactly what they want to focus on anymore. And it's absolutely fine when writing a story like the way they did. But the one thing this is an interesting part is you have all of this material. It's no longer coming up with some stuff off the fly. You can just take it and reinterpret. You can take what worked and reinterpret it into something a little bit more.
And then add bits, fix bits and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And maybe not kill everybody.
That'd be nice.
I mean, I do think that one thing is always abundantly clear is fans, for the most part, think that they know best. But you do get the odd fan that does know best. They can really, some creators are sort of, they look at their projects and they're kind of like, yeah, I like this project. But then you see the fans, and the fans are like, oh my God, I love this project. Because some people lay the groundwork, and then other people bounce ideas off, and they're like, this could go really well into this. And I think the concept of maybe having a different director take on the role of sort of fixing and differently, slightly interpreting the actual story of it could do wonders for actually revitalizing the series.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I feel like it needs to be kind of reinterpreted, either by someone who's a fan or someone who can look at it with a really straightforward view and go, this is working, this isn't.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and I do want to talk about, obviously, since this is Saw, and it is what it is, and it was built off of blood and gore to a degree. I mean, in terms of actually having people come back and everything, just the novelty of having people die in different ways every single film, every single year. It wasn't just watching Freddy or Jason or something just hack and slash their way through box office glory.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. It's also a big thing with other franchises like Final Destination. You can't get away from the traps, but how would they work in a television series? I mean, could they be as big? Even if it's an anime series, you could do a lot more without having the physical limitations of being physically involved with something or having to pay for
the parts,
weird contraptions. But I mean, should it be as big as the movies got, or did the movies become too aggressive after a certain point?
I mean, for me personally, I think that a lot of the traps were still really intricate and really clever towards the end. The traps, to me, never really dwindled as the series went on. I felt as the story kind of faded, the traps still stayed quite. They were always going to be the meat and the interesting bit of the series. People tuned in to Saw to watch the traps originally, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what people kind of was like, oh, you should have seen this. This happens in this film. Oh my God, that's amazing. And I really think that what they could do in a series, and we sort of talked about this a little bit off air, but they could kind of really try and put as far as a series goes, put a trap an episode, and then in between the bits of the traps kind of have a bit more story development going on, and then they can kind of have maybe leaving little Easter eggs in each episode. And in the last episode of the series, all the Easter eggs come together and it makes sense for the finale sort of thing. And with that, you could make a trap each episode, but it's not the main focus of the episode, if you get what I mean. And I think with that, they could drag some of them out, so they're not always in a rush to do more ones. I mean, because if I remember correctly, I mean, I could be mistaken. I'm counting on you two to point me out and go, no, that was wrong. The trap that Amanda was in, she in one in the second film or something like that. I can't remember.
She was in one every film.
Yeah. Sorry, I think actually the one I'm thinking of, the one where she's got the head device on, was that like not in one of the films and it was referred back to as a flashback or something?
No, that was the first film, The Bear Trap.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, right. So when we saw that, and then doesn't she try and put somebody else in the bear trap in one of the later films?
You're thinking of Jill.
Am I?
Yeah.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
Just
Well,
out.
yeah, okay. So for the same sort of thinking, you know, the fact that they recycled some of the traps, they could kind of do it in a similar way. But once you've seen an episode where they've focused entirely on that trap, to bring it back in a later episode, somebody would be like, "Oh no, we already know how this one works," kind of thing, and that puts a bit of stake in the trap, and everyone's like, "Oh!" Even more so than before because they've already seen it once, sort of thing. And you could have somebody escape from it in one. You could even have an episode where two people are in the same trap and you see one person doing it, but you can't tell who's going to escape it and who's not. So you know that one of them's going to fail or something, and that would kind of do the seesaw effect through the entire episode where you've got all this build-up and tension, and then you've got the other person has the exact same thing, and that's like a cheap way of getting some good tension.
Personally, my favourite traps are kind of the ones that aren't kind of straight brutal, because some of them are like, ugh.
Yeah.
They're
more clever.
The ones that are clever, and the ones that you kind of feel like the person that's kind of on the other side of the trap, you can kind of feel like the fear and the kind of the angst about it. Like, personally, my favourites are kind of when the other person has to choose. So they are not directly part of the trap.
Yeah.
Like,
to play on emotions.
Like you get the carousel trap, where he can only live.
That reaction.
Oh man, I know what you mean. Yeah,
I love it. You know, because they're not part of it, and it's almost like instead of kind of hurting them physically, he's hurting them mentally.
Yeah, it's only as I'm here I'm realizing how fucked up you are.
And you know, those are the traps that I've heard some people really complain about too, because the whole intention, the whole outlook is everyone has a chance, and it's like straight up murder. I mean, someone has, like, everyone I guess has the same chance of them being picked, but people are being straight up murdered, and it's just the psychological nature of it, and just like how much that hurts. The carousel trap has to be, if there was a list of like best traps, I mean, that has to just be absolutely one of them. It's just like you could just feel the emotion in it, and just how the guy's just, "You look at me when you're killing me," and it's oh god,
oh my
it's
god,
like,
don't.
It still gives me chills.
I know, like. Oh,
I mean, you've got those brutal ones, but then you've got the ones that are sort of, you know, like the barrel of needles, where they have to put the hands in to get the keys and stuff like that. Is that second film when they're in the house and they've got to unlock all the doors?
Oh, the hole of used needles, like the in the ground.
Yeah,
and then you got then you got the video games that is its own things, but.
Yeah, Molly was only asking me about that before we did this video. She was just having like a quick look up, and she was like, "You know what? They should really make a Saw video game that's like that." And I was like, "Oh, there is one." And she was like, "Really?"
Yeah, there's two, and they focus on Detective Tapp, who survives the first game, or the first movie apparently, and then the second one is his son, and the second one is a lot better. If anyone hasn't played those, I mean, like, they're interesting. They're interesting games, and they do take place in the same universe. Like, they're supposed to be quote unquote continuity, but it's so intricate, and they don't really talk about the story that much. But you know, to me, if we're talking about our favorite traps and the ones that we'd like to see on air or like on a television show, mine are the more individual ones. I love the bear trap and the fly swatter and the fly trap, or whatever it's called, and I love, and you know, it kind of got away from this. You know, the furnace. When you're in hell, only the devil can help you out, and stuff like that. And this, you know, everything they did in the first two films, where there was like these individual traps, but maybe there's more than one person there, and they can force other people into doing traps or do other people's traps as they did, and fail or succeed as they go.
Yeah, I mean, which one was it? Was it the fifth or sixth film when they've got to do the blood donation one, and they stick their hands in the thing, and they've got to put so much blood? Yeah,
That was awesome.
yeah,
That,
man.
yeah, like the begin with 5, and it's when they get to the end and it's that sudden realization of shit.
yeah,
We didn't have to do all of this.
yeah.
We could have all survived.
Exactly. Yeah, and again, like I was saying about kind of the psychological, not only are they like hurting physically, and and obviously they're having to stick their freaking hands in like in a saw, and she's got half her hand hanging off,
Yeah, I mean, imagine that. Imagine that as like if they did that in the series, and then in the final episode they realise that everybody they've lost over the last few episodes could have lived. That's the thing that kind of makes you go, what? Because you've been built up for all this.
This is what I love about it, but this is why I so don't agree when people are just like, oh, it's just torture porn. It's the whole kind of psychological thing, and that's kind of what I love about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, a bit of a butterfly effect in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. And obviously with the show, like you said, having more time, if the reason it doesn't work in the movie as well, and not that the 5 become one trap and Saw 5 is not an interesting trap, it's just it doesn't work as well as it could have because they have to focus so much time away from everything else.
Totally.
Yeah, and
totally.
All the time they have to put into the story, all the time they have to put, well, I say, or that lack thereof, or sometimes like the stuff that they have to put into making like the characters you care for before they're even in the trap. So if you've got like the one in Saw 5 where you got the 5 become one sort of thing, and you've got all these characters you've got to build up, you've got to start caring for them before they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that in a short amount of time, especially when the rest of the time has got to be devoted to the other traps in the same film, and then the character development of the people we're already aware of and the storytelling that's going on. It is very difficult to do that in a very short amount of time, and horror films, let's be honest, don't tend to have the longest run time in total anyway. Mm-hmm. So to put that into a series, let's say for this instance, let's say it wasn't an anime, and let's say it was more like American Horror Story or Scream or something, and they'd made them like 45-minute episodes, the amount of character development and care you could put into that, it'd almost be like the amount of care you have in Breaking Bad for half the characters if it's done correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
totally.
And you build up, and not just to talk about, if you were to do this, be it in a live action 45-minute television show or hour-long drama, whatever you want to call it, or an anime or something, the way I would like to see it, just kind of interpreting the way that the series was actually told itself, because the series really hinges, even from the very beginning, on flashbacks, flash forwards, all this all this kind of flashbacks, all this stuff, pictures being taken and shown, I feel like the way you would take this, if you were to take it like, okay, make it kind of a serialized but episodic where you have traps, or maybe you have one big trap that goes on for multiple episodes where people are going through, like a group of people are going from one to another and having to interpret the puzzle every episode.
Yeah.
The way you could focus on that could be your bedrock of every single episode, and the way you kind of go back and explain who, like I said, if you take that as a bedrock and you go back and you need to kind of show how it's all kind of building and interweaving this concept of, you have 3 different kind of main stories. You have Amanda and John, you have Carrie and Eric, and you have Adam, all kind of on their own little islands. The way you would do that is kind of how the series did it, but in a little different way, where as they're going through these traps, then we can flash back to Amanda and John actually setting up the trap and kind of getting to know each other and all this stuff, and we can flash forward to the investigation of what happened, or what happened either the prior episode or anything like that, kind of really looking at it from every different angle, like past, present, and future, as you go on through each episode. And that would be an interesting way to kind of keep the spirit of the series alive, while also trying to tell a story and focus on all these different intermoving parts.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, man. I hear what you're saying. I think the general consensus I think we're all coming to is yes, this series needs to go into a TV series. I think that's pretty much what
Totally.
what we've established through the entirety of this video. I think we've all come to the same conclusion that this would work. So, I dare I say better than it has in the films, just as a TV series. So, if it's an anime, great. It'd be interesting to see what they do with that. And if it's live action, I'd just be really interested to see who they could cast and who would do a good job and stuff like that. I think it would be very interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, it'd be a real success.
And here's what I want everyone who's listened this far to do. If you've listened this far, thank you so much. I want you to go in and I want you to hashtag Saw the TV series or something like that. Whatever you think is a good hashtag, really.
Yeah, Saw TV series or something. I'm not going to come up with a funny one because this isn't really going to be. This isn't a bust a nut and bolt situation. This is more of a serious one. So
and so yeah, like it's one of the serious ones. And I want you to go into the comment section below and tell us like what you liked about what we think. How would you think a Saw series should be kind of interpreted? How would you kind of pitch it? Characters you would focus on, stories you would tell, traps you would have, and really like live action or anime. And if it's live action, who would you have cast in it? I think that's actually a really interesting question.
Yeah, and also if it's live action, hashtag live action for your vote, and if you want anime, hashtag anime.
There you go.
There you go. There's some good stuff because I'm really interested to see how many people are one side of the boat and how many people are other side of the boat, because it really depends on whether you've really liked the stuff like American Horror Story and Scream, or if you're into the more sort of anime style thing, like you say, where there's less limitations and stuff. Mm-hmm. Also, I mean, I don't suppose there's really all that many gory animes these days, is there? So
yeah, I feel like it would work either way. It's something that can kind of be. I mean, obviously, we've seen this series be stretched out in between, 6 years, 7 films worth of content. You can take this and reinterpret it into multiple 4 or 5 seasons of an hour-long drama, sure. But you can also do the exact same thing in a 30-episode anime. So, really interesting concept. How would you guys like to actually see this be interpreted? Anyway, we've been going on for about an hour here almost, so I just really want to thank you both for coming on my channel and just talking to me about this. I was really excited to do this, and I'm really glad that y'all joined me.
No, thank you ever so much for having us. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I really thank you for including World Queen Kanji in this as well, because I think she really got a buzz out of doing this as well.
Sorry, I'm such a newbie.
No, I did too. It's something that I've been really wanting to do. Is a passion project of mine, and maybe what I'll do if I have the time, I can sit around and I can draft up a treatment or something for a pilot of something I'd like to see, everything we talked about here for a separate video in the same series, where something kind of explaining more about like everything we talked about and what I would like to see based off what we talked about. So yeah,
it'd be really cool to get your ideas on that. We can sit here and sort of be like, yes, I really like that, or no, it's shit, Mark. What do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't watch that show.
So with that being said, guys, please make sure to go out and sub to World King Kanji. He makes amazing content, mostly Dragon Ball stuff. Maybe he'll and wrestling. Actually, he's just started doing wrestling stuff. So if you like wrestling, obviously go and sub to him. And if I remember advertisements right and everything, I mean they advertised the Saw films really heavily during WWE, at least in the States. So
they did, yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you've gotten this far, do like wrestling. This guy covers it. He's a big fan. He knows his stuff. So go sub to him for that. Anyway. Thank you for coming on this video with me, as I already said, and thank y'all for listening to this video. Bye.
Bye!